Here is section 1 of the story. They called us primitive, then we took their throne, written with a minimum of 700 words. ##### Section 1, The Judgment of Earth. They arrived not with guns blazing, but with elegance and quiet contempt. Above Earth's blue sky, silver arcs descended like curved blades, glistening under sunlight. These were not meteors nor missiles, but ships, massive, seamless constructs that defied gravity and reflected the clouds in their mirrored hulls. The world watched as 12 colossal vessels entered orbit in unison, forming a perfect circle above the equator, casting coordinated shadows across oceans and continents.
No warning. No invitation. Just presence. Dominance.
The Galactic Concord had arrived. They called themselves the caretakers of civilization, and Earth, they said, was an infant species stumbling around in the dark. Their first broadcast was calm, translated into every human language. *, we come not as conquerors, but as educators. You are not ready to join the galactic community, but we will guide your development. For your safety, and ours. *. To most, it sounded like a declaration of cultural imprisonment. To others, it was a declaration of war. Within days, their emissaries descended. Tall beings with elongated skulls, skin tones ranging from obsidian to shimmering gold. Their robes shimmered like liquid crystal, their eyes glowing with neural enhancements. They walked our streets with their hands behind their backs, examining everything like one would inspect a cave drawing. The moment they set foot on Earth, they exuded superiority, ***, not through threat, but through sheer indifference. ***. Every word they uttered reinforced one theme: we are above you. They observed our governments like curious sociologists, poked fun at our primitive combustion engines, and laughed softly at the idea of democracy. Their technology made ours look like toys. They could manipulate gravity, communicate telepathically through quantum entanglement, and terraform a desert into an oasis in under a day. Humanity, by contrast, still struggled with poverty, disease, and wars over imaginary borders. The Global Assembly of Nations, hastily convened at Geneva, attempted diplomacy. Representatives from every continent dressed in their finest suits, eager to prove Earth's worth. The Concord's delegates watched with polite interest before releasing their verdict publicly. *, a resource-rich Class 4 biosphere. Homo sapiens display accelerated neuroplasticity but unstable emotional responses and hierarchical aggression. Not suitable for full membership. Recommended, containment and developmental oversight. *. In less sanitized terms, *, you are clever apes with guns. Dangerous, unstable, and embarrassingly backward. *.
The insult was global.
News stations ran headlines like Earth fails the test, humanity, too primitive to join the stars, and galactic babysitters to oversee Earth. On social media, hashtags like #primalpride and #unfitbyWhose standards trended. Protests erupted in capital cities. Temples and churches saw a surge in attendance. A wave of existential dread, mixed with planetary shame, gripped billions. But not everyone bowed. Among those who watched silently was Dr. Layla Singh, a theoretical physicist who had spent her career trying to prove that humanity could one day match the stars. Based in the Karakoram Advanced Research Hub, a secluded mountaintop complex in northern Pakistan, she'd been one of the few who had anticipated first contact. But she hadn't expected it to feel like colonization. She watched the alien broadcasts closely. Not the content, they were full of self-congratulating superiority, but the data they leaked unknowingly. Energy signatures, particle manipulations, even linguistic anomalies in their quantum speech patterns. The Concorde didn't hide their secrets because they assumed no one on Earth could even understand them. But Layla did. She wasn't alone either. Across the globe, a quiet resistance formed. Not with weapons. Not yet. But with thought. Physicists, engineers, linguists, sociologists. The best of humanity met in encrypted channels, dark servers, and private bunkers. They called themselves the Primarchs, a nod to humanity's primitive label and a twist of irony. Because something didn't sit right. Why arrive now? Why Earth, out of millions of planets in the galaxy? Why this sudden interest in helping humanity evolve? Then came the buried report, a leaked document smuggled out of a Concorde data node by a rogue AI analyst sympathetic to Earth. It revealed the truth: Earth was the most biosynthetically diverse world the Concorde had ever discovered. Its atmosphere was rare. Its oceans held chemical matrices that couldn't be replicated artificially. More importantly, its people possessed an anomaly, a cognitive chaos that made them unpredictable, volatile, and creative beyond algorithmic modeling. The Concorde hadn't come to elevate Earth. They had come to claim it before someone else did. Dr. Layla Singh read the document twice.
Then a third time.
And then she smiled, not with joy, but with grim understanding. They called us primitive, she whispered to herself, eyes locked on the stars. But they forgot that evolution doesn't ask for permission.
It takes.
And somewhere, high above Earth, the throne of galactic power trembled, if only a. Here is section 2 of the story. They called us primitive, then we took their throne, written with a minimum of 700 words. #### section 2, the rise of the primitive. The insult should have broken humanity's spirit.
Instead, it unified it.
For the first time in known history, every nation, rival and ally alike, set aside its flags. World leaders, who once hurled accusations across conference tables, now huddled behind closed doors to share intelligence. Former enemies passed data drives instead of threats. The United Nations evolved into a different kind of entity, something leaner, smarter, and forged by necessity. It became the Earth Strategic Alliance, ESA, a coalition bound by a single question: how do we fight gods with sticks? At first, the answer seemed hopeless. The Galactic Concord's presence grew daily. Their drones, oblong silent machines with glowing cores, drifted through the skies like floating sentinels. They observed, mapping cities, monitoring power grids, analyzing behavior. They hovered over schools and military installations alike, smiling with the smugness of invincibility. But arrogance, Layla knew, was a chink in any armor. In hidden labs and converted bunkers, the pre-March initiative expanded. They recruited scientists, engineers, hackers, and even street-level mechanics. Layla herself coordinated research out of the Karakoram hub, now sealed off from any Concord scans by a makeshift electromagnetic cloaking dome powered by repurposed solar storms. If Earth was primitive, it was also improvisational, and improvisation was something the Concord didn't understand. Their civilization was old.
Too old.
They had stopped evolving long ago, choosing to preserve their technological dominance rather than innovate further. Their machines maintained themselves. Their data flowed in perfect harmony. Their culture prized order above all. Humans, by contrast, thrived in chaos. The first breakthrough came from a scavenger team operating in post-industrial ruins outside Lagos. They salvaged parts from a crashed Concorde scout drone and, without full understanding, wired them into a hydroelectric grid. What resulted wasn't clean energy, but a short-lived gravity fluctuation, strong enough to crush an entire tank. They had accidentally created a weapon. The Lagos incident set off a chain reaction. Similar salvage experiments popped up in Siberia, South Korea, Brazil. Engineers married alien superconductors to human railgun systems. Hackers piggybacked on Concorde quantum channels using crude algorithms and ancient Earth languages the Concorde translators couldn't decipher. One team in Peru embedded code into music frequencies to confuse Concorde AI drones. This wasn't just resistance. It was evolution at gunpoint. Layla Singh, meanwhile, had other plans. She theorized that the human brain, despite being limited by biological wetware, could be synchronized across short distances. Not fully linked like the Concorde's neural lattice, but loosely bound in cooperative cognition. Her prototype, codenamed Neurothread, used modified EEG helmets and real-time neural mapping. The first tests were messy, participants vomited or blacked out from neural feedback, but after months of refinement, it worked. A unit of 6 soldiers operating under Neurothread could fight as one. They anticipated each other's moves. Acted as a single organism. Reacted faster than any Concorde algorithm could model.
They weren't drones. They were predators.
Word of the human awakening spread quickly.
The Concorde dismissed it.
Their senior council labeled the resistance cultural rebellion, a tantrum of a young species. But some among them, particularly the younger members of lesser Concorde races, began to doubt. These humans weren't supposed to adapt.
Not this fast. Not this hard. They didn't upgrade, they transformed.
One such defector was a Siri named Kelzar, a Concorde xenobiologist tasked with studying Earth's biosphere. But Kelzar fell in love, not with a human, but with humanity. He was fascinated by its contradictions: war poets, laughing soldiers, lovers who painted art on bomb shelters. He defected during an unscheduled atmospheric survey and brought with him detailed schematics of Concorde energy shields, troop formations, and even access codes to orbital comms. With Kelzar's help, the ESA launched Operation Nightseed, a coordinated digital virus that blacked out 3 Concorde satellites and temporarily blinded their orbital sensors. In those 5 hours, the humans struck. A Concorde outpost in the Himalayas, used for atmospheric study, was completely annihilated.
No humans were seen.
No footage captured. The post simply disappeared, replaced by a crater rimmed with melted alloy and scorched earth. The Concorde blamed meteor activity. Layla watched from her mountaintop as global resistance cells celebrated in the shadows. But she knew the real war hadn't started yet. This was just a jab. The first signal flare in a long, brutal campaign. Her fingers hovered over a console, scanning reports from resistance cells, defecting aliens, and ESA command. Then her eyes focused on a pattern in the Concorde communications net. They still thought humans were too disorganized to launch a coordinated assault. That ignorance would cost them. She activated the neurothread link and spoke to her distributed team, her voice resonating in the minds of hundreds across the globe. We were forged in pressure and chaos. We build empires from ash. They may have stars, but we have the fire.
Prepare yourselves.
The throne is within reach. And so, beneath a sky filled with alien eyes, Earth's rebellion was no longer a question of if, but when. Here is section 3 of the story. They called us primitive, then we took their throne, written with a minimum of 700 words. ##### Section 3, War of the Crowns. The throne had wobbled. Now, Earth would make it fall.
The Concorde still didn't understand.
They had mistaken silence for surrender, patience for fear. But Earth had simply been waiting, gathering its strength, building its own tools, finding the gaps in an empire that had grown complacent. In every war humanity had ever fought, it had learned something, adapted. And now, the lessons of Earth's past were being repurposed into the future of galactic conflict. It began with a declaration. Broadcast across Concorde comms in every known language, a transmission struck the galaxy like thunder.
You called us primitive.
Now, you'll see what that truly means. And with that, Earth's fleets rose. They were not polished like the Concorde dreadnoughts. Earth's warships were angular, scarred from atmospheric testing and built in secret foundries beneath oceans, inside mountains, and under frozen tundras. Some were welded from Concorde wreckage, others made from hybrid alloys combining nanocarbon and meteorite-forged materials. They looked crude, but inside, they were deadly machines of innovation. The flagship was called the Exodus Flame. And it wasn't just a ship.
It was a statement.
On board, General Tiga Adebayo stood on the command deck, flanked by augmented tacticians and AI-enhanced war strategists. Formerly a West African defense commander, he now led the Earth Strategic Assault Command, ESAC. Around him, human and alien defectors stood side by side, their uniforms mismatched but united by purpose. Their first mission: cut off the head of the Hydra. The Concorde's military base on Mars, once the jewel of their Sol system outposts, was the target. The Red Bastion, they called it. Its walls were made of reactive alloys, and its defenses were automated, thought-controlled by a Concorde AI mind core.
But it was predictable. Rigid.
Programmed to expect logic and pattern. The human fleet attacked with chaotic genius. They launched decoy vessels built to mimic radiation surges from solar flares, baiting the Bastion sensors. At the same time, an Earth-made quantum disruptor was fired from behind Phobos, creating a temporal echo that tricked the Concorde targeting systems into believing the fleet was 500 kilometers off course. Then came the real assault. Neurothread units were deployed in specialized drop pods, dozens of synchronized soldiers landing at the same heartbeat, storming the base like a single living organism. Concorde soldiers, trained to expect order and hierarchy, were overwhelmed. They had never seen combat units act with such fluid unpredictability. Human soldiers would bait fire, only to swap roles mid-fight, each anticipating the other's move. Some operated in complete silence, reacting to shared thought instead of shouted commands. By the end of the second solar day, the Concorde flag on Mars was burning in Martian dust. The Earth Standard, a silver DNA helix on a black field, fluttered where once the Concorde seal had hung. Humanity had taken its first world. Across the galaxy, shock waves rippled. The Council of Nine, the ruling body of the Concorde, met in crisis. On their artificial capital world of Xeron, where stone and technology blended seamlessly in glowing architecture, panic began to replace arrogance. Some counselors demanded full-scale retaliation. Others, more cautious, urged analysis. How could Earth, a species that hadn't even mastered faster-than-light travel, deal such a blow? It wasn't just technology. It was tactics.
Will. Imagination.
Rage. ****. And the Concorde wasn't just fighting soldiers anymore, they were fighting a culture. Layla Singh watched it unfold from her mountain lab, her consciousness tethered through the neurothread to field agents and AI scouts. She read Concorde social feeds, monitored alien broadcasts, and even intercepted propaganda. Something fascinating was happening. the galactic public was turning. The Concord had ruled with stability, but also stagnation. Art had faded, risk was discouraged, creativity sanitized. Now, aliens were watching Earth videos, street dances, war songs, documentaries about rebellions, even ancient battle films. They weren't just frightened by humans.
They were captivated.
Aliens who had never seen real war were downloading Earth military history. Musicians in distant solar systems were composing symphonies inspired by human emotion. And on more than one Concord world, rebellion sparked.
Small at first.
Symbols painted in secret.
A whisper of a phrase.
Primitive doesn't mean powerless.
Meanwhile, Earth pressed on.
With Kelzar's help, Earth's engineers reverse-engineered Concord phase shields and adapted them for mobile use. Infantry armor now featured microshield nodes. Jet troopers operating in Earth's thinner atmosphere struck deep into Concord-controlled orbital elevators, disrupting supply chains. The second great victory came above Saturn. Concord fleets engaged Earth's ragtag battlegroup in what should have been a decisive win. But Earth's captains used unorthodox tactics, simulated power failures, fake ship mutinies, even gravitational slingshot maneuvers that should have killed the crew but didn't, thanks to last-minute hull recalibrations.
They weren't just outgunned. They were out-imagined.
The throne now shook violently. Layla Singh issued the next directive: initiate the final convergence. It was time to push beyond Sol. Time to strike at the heart of the old empire.
The fleets realigned.
Rebel cells in Concord space activated. The galaxy wasn't just watching anymore.
It was choosing sides.
And many, to the horror of the Concord elite, were choosing Earth. Here is section 4 of the story: they called us primitive, then we took their throne, written with a minimum of 700 words. #### section 4, the throne ascended. The throne was no longer just wobbling, it was crumbling. The Galactic Concord had ruled for 10,000 years. Its laws, cultures, and technologies were thought unshakable. Yet now, in the span of a single Earth solar cycle, that illusion lay in ruins. The species they had mocked, catalogued as unstable and underdeveloped, had breached their sanctuaries, crushed their military pride, and, most damning of all, inspired rebellion among their own. The final campaign was inevitable. After the Mars victory and the Saturn ambush, Earth had won the solar system. Humanity no longer fought for survival.
They fought for dominion.
General Adebayo stood aboard the Exodus Flame, which now served as the flagship of a united fleet, human vessels alongside those of defected Concord species. Rebel Siri, once minor diplomats, now piloted sleek recon ships beside Terran war frigates. Krellian fireweavers aligned with Earth's tactical divisions, their flame-based weaponry integrated into battlefield command. The Vexari, a former enslaved species whose art and emotion had been suppressed for centuries, sang Earth hymns over their own encrypted comms, turning battle into a kind of symphony. Their target was the Concord homeworld, Xeron, the throne planet. Xeron wasn't just a seat of power, it was a symbol. A megastructure of stone and starlight, suspended in artificial orbit between twin suns. Its towers, veined with blue energy and impossible geometry, had stood untouched for millennia. From here, the Council of Nine had ruled with the cold logic of tradition. Their decisions were relayed across sectors instantly, their fleets dispatched to correct or crush disorder. But Xeron had grown soft. Behind its walls of marble and myth, the Council had stopped questioning its supremacy. And that weakness would be its undoing. The siege of Xeron began at dawn, galactic dawn. Earth's ships didn't arrive in waves. They folded into space in spirals and impossible angles, guided by a new human FTL design based on partially understood Concord jump arrays. Layla Singh herself had led the team that built them, primitive, maybe, but stable. Barely. The Concord forces scrambled to respond, but their battle algorithms hadn't adapted to Earth's patternless attack logic. Human captains changed formations mid-jump, directed squads via poetry and code phrases, and even deployed holographic decoys of old Terran gods.
It wasn't war.
It was mythology turned strategy. And Earth was winning. On the ground, Layla Singh stepped foot onto Xeron's soil in a light armor suit lined with her neurothread mesh. She led a mixed company, humans, defected aliens, and AI drones acting as support. They moved through the outer precincts with surgical speed, disabling the power cores of defensive emplacements, melting through the Concord's archaic but overbuilt gates. Layla's mind stretched across hundreds of soldiers, feeding them thoughts, images, emotions, battle as art.
She didn't issue orders. She shared intent.
Meanwhile, the Council of Nine collapsed in fear and chaos. 3 members had already fled the throne spire. Two others tried to activate a failsafe protocol, an orbital planetary cannon meant to sterilize the capital, but found the code had been rewritten.
By whom?
A young Krellian rebel, now a field marshal under Earth command. His voice played over Xeron's public address system. You silenced us for centuries. Now, we speak through thunder. By midday, the throne chamber was breached. Layla entered the Hall of Sovereignty, its golden ceilings cracked from explosions, the once shimmering banners of Concord rule trampled by boots and scorched by plasma fire. Only two counselors remained. One knelt, eyes wide, trembling. The other stood tall, armored in ceremonial crystal, holding a blade made of psionic matter. We are the Order of the Stars, the elder hissed. You are a spark in the void. Layla didn't draw a weapon. She stepped forward and said, then let this spark become the sun. The final counselor lunged. But it was over in seconds. No death blow. No revenge. Her neurothread allies immobilized him, and instead of execution, she offered him mercy, the one thing the Concord had denied billions for centuries. We are not you, she said. The galaxy changed that day. Earth did not take the throne in blood. They rebuilt it. The Hall of Sovereignty became the Chamber of Worlds, redesigned with Earth engineers and artists. Statues of past rulers were replaced with living gardens from Earth's biomes and sculptures from every member species of the new alliance. Music filled the halls, not just human but alien. Collaborative. Unscripted. The new leadership body was not a council of 9, but a concordance of worlds, where every civilization had equal voice. And yes, Earth led, but not as a tyrant. As an example. In her inauguration speech, Layla stood beneath Xeron's twin suns and addressed a galactic audience. They called us primitive. They saw our flaws, our fires, our fury. But they didn't see the dreams in our chaos. We were not made to bow. We were made to build, again and again, until the stars themselves acknowledged what we already knew. That evolution isn't a straight line. It's a storm. And humanity is its lightning. The stars did not answer her speech with applause. They answered with silence, and then slowly with hope. Because for the first time in millennia, the throne was not feared. It was earned.